Shipment is here. Let's see. I hope I get a mirror shard. I really do. Let's see. Hope for a mirror shard. Boom, there it is. 1 mirror shard, 4 divines, 2 sacred orbs. Well, let's go. This is my first time trying this build after the league. I want to say that it's pretty immortal. It can almost run all the map modifiers except, well, just a few, but with enough investment I think it might be able to run everything. Of course you do need a bit of currency to start. This is at level 88. Look at how much damage I'm tanking. This is tier 17. How's it going, guys? Series here, and today I bring you the build that I've been using to farm Abyss and other endgame farming strategies. This is the Smite of Divine Judgment Trickster. Now this is not a build that I've created. I have been following Pujet's guide, and I have to say this build is quite tanky. I mean, you can AFK in tier 17 maps. You can pretty much run all the modifiers except I think just a few, but sometimes you can manage even with the worst ones. However, I need to say you do need a bit of currency to start playing this build. I would recommend you have around 100 divines just to start. I myself am around the mid investment in it. I am willing to sink some more currency later on. However, for now it's doing very well. Now enough with the introduction. Let's start with its defensive layers. We are looking at 90% physical damage reduction. With our Pantheon this will give us a bit more. We are looking at 100% spell suppression with 63% spell prevention. Now this is normally at 50. For the Trickster it's 63. We are looking at 84 max fire res, 84 max lightning res, 90% max cold res. We are immune to chaos damage. We have 60% chance to block attacks, 61% chance to block spell damage. Of course, with the higher investment, we can aim for the cap over those as well. Now let's start talking a bit about the uniques we're using in the build. First of all, the build revolves around the ephemeral edge. This is because of the line attacks with weapon have added maximum lightning damage equal to a player's percentage of maximum energy shield. This is why we're stacking energy shield. Of course, you want to get it with the resolute technique. So we have bypassed the accuracy penalty, but of course on the downside that you cannot deal critical strikes, but who cares, we have ton of flat damage. We do not want critical strikes. For our second unique we'll be using the Whispers of Infinity. This will add a shit ton of flat energy shield. As you can see, I have 470 energy shield. If you look at my energy shield, when I remove the amulet, I'm getting down to 11.8. Just from the amulet we're up to 14.3, so this is very important. Ideally you want to get it with 350 energy shield. Now as for the other modifiers, we really don't care about them. Of course, the skills cost energy shield instead of mana is very important. We're using this so we can reserve all of our mana, and we'll be spending energy shield when we attack. As for our second unique, we'll be using the Aegis Aurora. This is very nice in terms of tankiness. It will give us a lot of block chance. It will give us elemental damage with attacks. It will give us energy shield recovery when we block. And of course it will give us some lightning resistance, some armor, some energy shield, and +5 to maximum cold resistance. This is why we're at 90% max cold resistance. This is a very nice shield. Now of course if you're not looking for that much tankiness, you can use a rare shield that provides us more energy shield. Now as for our unique ring, we'll be using the Anathema Moonstone ring. This is very nice because it gives us a lot of flat intelligence, and it gives us your curse limit is equal to your power charges. Now by default each character has 3 power charges. This is why we'll be using 3 curses. And of course it gives us some energy shield on our implicit. Now as for my belt, I am using a mage blood. This will help quite with the attributes because it gives us a bit of strength for starters. It gives us some resistances, but the most benefits out of it is that we're getting 100% uptime on our flasks, so we can craft the 70% increased effect. So we're getting a lot of benefits from our flasks. As for my rare pieces, I am using a ring that has a lot of intelligence, some attributes, some flat damage, some resistance, but of course the important thing is the base, so we can have a more energy shield. We'll be using a lit circlet helmet because this is the one that gives us the most added energy shield. We'll be using the implicit of mana reservation and increase effect of punishment curse. So ideally you want to aim for as high energy shield as possible with intelligence. Same thing goes for the gloves. You want to aim for intelligence, as high energy shield as possible. With the attack speed, we will be using the gain 1 rage attack on hit and the 3% increased damage per 100 intelligence as implicit. Now of course you can get better tier implicits. This depends on how much you're willing to invest in the build. Now as for the boots, we'll be using warlock boots, of course with a lot of intelligence, a lot of energy shield, maybe some resistance, some other attributes, but of course you need to have movement speed on your boots. This is very important. As for our implicits, we're looking at 4% increased action speed, and General Cry has increased cooldown recovery rate because we are using General Cry, of course. Now let's talk about Pantheons. I am taking Soul of Lunaris because we're taking 1% physical damage reduction for each enemy around us up to 8, and increased movement speed also up to 8%. We can have a chance to avoid projectiles. We take 6% reduced elemental damage if we've been hit recently, and we can avoid projectiles that chain. Now of course you can take the Souls of Lunaris. This is nice for crits also. You can alternate between the two if you want. It depends on what type of map you're running. And for our minor one, we are taking the Soul of Tukohama. The last one really doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the 3% additional physical damage reduction per second while we are stationary, because we will be stationary while attacking. Now let's talk a bit about our gems. We'll be using the Smite of Divine Judgment, the Val version of it, because it will give us a nice buff when we reach the amount of souls that we need. We're linking that to volatility support for more damage. The damage on full life support, we are chaos immune, so we're always on full life. Awakened elemental damage support. Now you want to use elemental damage with attack support. However, if you can afford this will be very nice because it will give you elemental reflection immunity. So you want to aim for a level 5 gem. At level 4 it will not give you the reflection immunity. A multi-strike support. Now if you're very rich you can buy an awakened multi-strike. However, this is very expensive. I believe this is above 200 divines, so you can get just a multi-strike support. And finally you will get energy shield leech support. This will help a lot with our leech and with some damage, and we are always leeching, so well, you get it. Now as for how we are gaining our frenzy charges, we're going to be using Poacher's Mark linked with Mark on hit support. This is how we'll be gaining our frenzy charges, and I have chosen Flame Dash as my movement skill. Now as for our aura, we'll be using Grace for more evasion, of course, Discipline for more energy shield, and Arctic Armor. It will give us physical damage reduction and fire damage reduction while stationary. And finally we're going to be using an Enlightened support, and our gloves will be using General Cry. This will summon a lot of mirages and they will deal a ton of damage. We'll be linking that to volatility support for more damage, with auto exertion, so that the mirages trigger by themselves. We do not need to trigger our war cry. And finally we'll be linking Blade Fury to them for also more stages and more damage. Now we are using Tempest Shield for a 40% chance to shock enemies when we block. We'll be dealing additional lightning damage, we'll be chaining, and we will add a 25% chance to block spell damage while holding a shield. And finally for our curses, we'll be using Punishment linked to Desecrate and Enfeeble. Now Desecrate will trigger our General's Cry. This is very important that you have, because to reach the Mirage stages you will be needing corpses. So you see the line, summon Mirage Warriors from 2 corpses per 5 power. This is why you need Desecrate. And finally we'll be linking all that to Arcanist Brand. We will be using the Arcanist Brand to attach our curses to the single targets. Now on here you can use Leap Slam and get more reservation and get Blood Stance or Sand Stance, but I didn't want more to invest more in mana reservation, so I'll be using Portable's Cast on Death. Now as for our tree, let's talk first about our Ascendancy. Of course, we'll be taking Polymath, so we can get 2% more damage for each mastery allocated, and we have allocated a lot of masteries. You'll be taking Escape Artist, of course, this is very nice. We'll get a lot of Energy Shield and Evasion. Soul Drinker to get our Overleech. This is very nice and very tanky. And finally, you will be taking Spellbreaker to get a 20% suppression and to prevent 10% more of spell damage. This is how we are reaching the 63% soul right here. But if you can get 100% spell suppression from your gear, I would suggest you drop these nodes and you take this one right here, one step ahead. This will help a lot with your action speed, and you won't be able to get slowed by drowning orbs and stuff like that. So this might be better. If you can get 100% suppressed from your gear, I would suggest you do that. As for our tree, as you can see, this is a pretty simple tree. We have taking a lot of evasion and energy shield nodes. We're taking some elemental damage with attack nodes. Here I'm taking the suppress wheel to cap my suppression. I'm taking also here some spell suppress wheel. Taking here the reduced cost of mana with the increased reservation mastery. Taking here a jewel. Here we're taking a cluster. Now as for the keystones, we'll be taking precise technique. So if we have more accuracy than our life, we'll be dealing more damage. Of course, we are at 1 life, so of course we'll be having more accuracy. And of course we'll be taking iron reflexes to convert all our evasion to armor, because evasion only helps when you're doing maps. You cannot evade boss attacks, so converting all this evasion to armor will not only help in mapping, it will also help in bossing. And this wheel right here helps really in synergy with the Aegis Aurora. It will guarantee us more block, and we're going to see more block, of course, with the 1% block spell damage per 5% block attack damage. This is very nice. It will help us to reach this maximum block chance. We'll be taking here some attack damage to leech. This will help also with the leech and damage. And for this mastery, if you are doing a tier 16.5 or tier 17 map and you roll the monster block 50% of your damage, you can unspec the non-val strike additional target and spec into monster cannot block your attacks. This will help you with mitigating this this modifier. Now let's talk a bit about the jewels. First of all, we'll be taking here Fertile Mind. This will grant us a lot of intelligence. As you can see from here, I have 617. If I remove that, I am down to 537. You want to get a perfect roll on that because they're pretty cheap. As for our second jewel, we will be taking a Light of Meaning. Now, there are 2 Light of Meanings that work for this build. One, this one that I'm using, the 6% increased lightning damage, and the other being the 6% increase energy shield. Now, the 6% increase energy shield is crazy expensive. I think last I checked, it was more than 50 divines. So this one is very cheap. I think it's around the mark of 3 to 4 divines at the time that I bought it. So this is a very cheap alternative, and I suggest you do it. You won't be able to recognize the differences. Now we have also right here a Watcher's Eye. The only line that you care about on your Watcher's Eye is 8% chance to block spell damage while affected by discipline. Now, if you want to go and invest more in a Watcher's Eye, the modifiers that you can look for is spell suppress while affected by grace. This will help a lot, so you can unspec this node and spec into 1 step ahead, or you can want maybe movement speed while affected by grace. This is just quality of life. As for our second jewel, we'll be taking a Storm Shroud. This will provide you with some lightning resistance. However, this will help you with your elemental ailment immunity, because the modifier to chance to avoid shock will apply to all elemental ailments, and we're getting avoid shock from our flask right here. We have 52% chance to avoid shock with the 25 increased effect from the prefix and the implicit of 70 increased effect. We are getting to 100. This is how we are elemental immunity capped. Of course, I forgot we will be taking chaos inoculation. I don't need to explain this one. Now, as for our last two unique tools, we will be taking a replica reckless defense. This will grant us up to 6% block spell damage and 6% block attack damage. I am taking two of them. And finally, our rare jewels. Now the jewels are very flexible. What you want to aim on your jewels is you want to get one with at least corrupted blood immunity, and the other one and the other stats that you need are maybe all attributes, flat intelligence, but the most important ones being increased energy shield and increased attack speed, like this one right here. Now, before I get into the clusters themselves, let me talk to you about the rune graph we're using. I am taking the rune graph of the fortress because it will increase our global defenses by 40% on the downside of reducing our attributes. This is the thing that you're gonna have to solve by yourself. You're gonna need to take some attributes on your other gear. However, this is not that mandatory. You can do without, and you can spec instead on the 5% of leeches instant on this mastery right here if you do not want to take the rune graph. Now let's talk about our clusters. The cluster jewels can get quite expensive. First of all, we are taking one with Feed the Fury, Martial Prowess, and Prodigious Defense. Now for the last stat, you either want intelligence, attack speed, attributes, resistances. It doesn't really matter, just get something that benefits your build. Now Feed the Fury will grant you more attack damage while leeching. This is very nice. Prodigious Defense will grant you more spell block and more attack block and more damage while holding a shield. And finally, Martial Prowess will grant you more attack damage and more attack speed. Now you ideally want to get two of this cluster, but I was missing some attributes, so I chose to take two of the other cluster. I am taking two of this cluster right here. The one that has Feed the Fury, Martial Prowess, and Veteran Defender. What Veteran Defender does, it gives us plus 15 to all attributes, plus 15% elemental resistance while holding shield, and also it will give you 60% increased defenses from your shield. This is very nice because your shield gives you block chance, it will give you armor, and it will give you energy shield. So yes, I am taking two of those, one with fire resistance and the other has cold resistance. Now I forgot to tell you about this mastery right here. We will be taking the 1% increased evasion rating per 5 intelligence. This is why we're stacking intelligence on top of the implicit right here for 3% increased damage per 100 intelligence. So dexterity doesn't do a lot of this on this build. However, we do have a lot of dexterity to spare, so what you can do is that you can put some tattoos here. You can put the spell suppress tattoo to help with your spell suppression, but they are very expensive, of course. You can maybe put some chance to avoid stun, a blind tattoo. You can do whatever you want with your green nodes because you're not going to be using them a lot. Now finally, let's talk about the Flask setup. First of all, we are using a prismatic tincture, so we get more than 100% increased elemental damage with melee weapons. And we will be taking the silver flask that grants you onslaught, so this is very important. Onslaught will grant you 20% more movement speed and attack speed. This is very nice. And for our other three flasks, we'll be taking a topaz flask, a sapphire flask, and ruby flask for more resistance and of course more maximum resistance. Now as for our suffixes on flasks, you'll be needing to take the increased block and stun recovery to help with your stuns, of course. I am taking one with increased armor at 60%, this is max roll. However, you can take one with evasion. This has the same effect. I am taking here 2 chance to avoid shock. We already talked about this to help with our elemental element immunity. And finally, here I am taking the reduce effect of curses. This will help a lot when you're rolling a map that has temporal chains, that has enfeeble, that has elemental weakness. This will grant you 100% to reduce the effect of curses on you. This is very, very nice. Now let's not forget, our merc is very, very important to our build. First of all, you'll be taking a kineticist, the better being infamous, of course, because she has elemental weakness curse as a start. She has inspiring cry. This will grant you increased damage. And finally, she has haste. It will grant you increased movement speed and increased attack and cast speed. As for her gear, we will be using a Doriani setup, because nearby enemies will have lightning resistance equal to yours, so they will have their resistances equal to the merc. We will be taking negative lightning resistance on both our rings. Now you want to ideally aim for minus 80%, however each of those rings are 4 divines, so if you want a more cheaper version you can get the minus 60% lightning resistance on both rings. So I think they'll cost about 100C each. You'll be taking the Immortal Flash because it will grant you minus 15% to all elemental resistance. So I'm looking here at minus 173 lightning resistance. The second item that's good, you'll be taking a Shaper Influenced Helmet for nearby enemies to take 6% increased elemental damage. We'll be taking a Prequel Stow because it will grant you lucky hits when you're dealing damage. If you don't know, lightning damage has a vast roll. For example, here it has either 560 for minimum and 2016.9k as maximum. When your damage is lucky, when you hit an enemy, you will register your roll twice and it will take the higher number. And finally, you want to anoint that dazzling strikes, so your merc has a chance to blind enemies and for increased effect of blind. Now as for your weapon, you want to take whatever, it doesn't even matter. All the other gear, you just want to aim for as much life, maybe some spell suppress, some you want to cap your resistances. Of course, it's very important to cap her resistances. Now as for the implicit on our gear, we'll be taking 23% increased cooldown recovery rate of travel skills, because this is the only thing that benefits our merc. As for the second one, you'll be taking drops sapped ground while moving, because sapped ground will make that the enemy standing on it will deal 6% less damage. As for the gloves, I will be taking a 15% chance to unnerve enemies on hit for 4 seconds and the inflict lightning exposure. Now I don't really know if that really works with the minus lightning resistance, but I have it on. Now finally, as for what do we do when we are farming Abyss, this is very important if you want to do this farm because it's very lucrative. You want to get a faster casting gem. You want to replace Arcanist brand with it, so now you will be casting it yourself. However, you will not be getting any benefits from punishment and enfeeble. You will have to cast them manually yourself. However, you don't need to do that. When you're farming Abyss, I don't even use enfeeble and punishment. I only use desecrate. And what you're gonna do next? You're gonna go into your tree. You're going to have to refund a few nodes. What I suggest you do is you refund those right here as a start, and I have one a 30 intelligence. I will refund that as well. And you can refund this one right here, increase damage of each of the auras. Just refund those. Just go into these, inspect them, and then you get the mastery, 25 chance to open nearby chests. And there you go, you will be using Desecrate, and this will open the chests nearby. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you want to replicate this build, fair warning, this can get quite expensive. I would not suggest you go into this build without at least 100 to 120 divines. This is not including the mage blood, of course. The mage blood alone is very, very expensive. However, you can do without it. Of course, I will be leaving my POB in the description, and I will be also leaving a link for Pudget's channel, because he has a lot of guides on this build, specifically on how to build it for a budget on a non-mage blood version, and he explains how to craft the gear. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I try to answer everything, and as always, like if you like, subscribe if you want, and thank you for watching.